Hey there, good afternoon. Welcome to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I'm the host of this show dedicated to progressive rock, hard rock, heavy metal, and other forms of rock music. So today we're doing My Strange Fascination. This is episode number 13. Lucky number 13? Or unlucky number 13. Coincidentally, the band happens to be probably in this position as far as my favorites go. And that's this band, Pink Floyd. And I chose this album because most people consider this their best album. It's not my favorite, but most people consider this their best album, Dark Side of the Moon. So Pink Floyd is a band who's had some influences on me over the past 4 decades or 5 decades since I discovered them. So for me, the discovery occurred in 79, 80, probably in 1980 when I discovered The Wall. Of course, you have to be on another planet not to discover that album if you're listening to rock music, because it was everywhere and it was on every music station. Probably the biggest album of the year, and maybe their quintessential album. Maybe, I'm not sure. So, Pink Floyd, The Wall. I listened to it for a bit, and a lot of guys in my class, of course, listened to it. It came out when I was in grade 9. I didn't really warm up to it. There was a few tracks on it I thought were interesting. Another Brick in the Wall, Part 2, of course, and that was about it for me initially. I did like Run Like Hell a bit as well, but after that I just wasn't really into the album. And I thought, if this is the way Pink Floyd sounds, and I really care for it. So out the door they went. Remained out the door for some 20 years before I let them back in. So when I did let them back in, it was because of this album. I bought this at a yard sale for $1, and I thought, wow, this is much different than The Wall was. And by that time I had listened to a Wall on occasion too, and I'd come to like Comfortably Numb as well. And but I never really warmed up to the album, but I began to hear songs on the radio. My friend played Welcome to the Machine. He had it on his setup for his phone service. Kind of interesting. So I had heard a few songs here and there, but it wasn't until I got to this album that I began to really take these guys as a serious group. So like I said, I'd known about them for 40 years, got into them a bit more with this album coming out, and I got this, I would say, at a yard sale in the late 90s in Fort Erie, where I was living, and began to play it on my stereo system in the car, and I played it quite a bit, and I liked it. And I thought, wow, this is more like what I was hoping it would be like. Or it's also in all probability that my taste in music had changed drastically. I was much more willing to accept progressive rock than I was when I discovered The Wall. To me, The Wall came right at the time when I was discovering Black Sabbath and Judas Priest and Iron Maiden and all those groups. So to me it was too wishy-washy and sounded kind of commercial. At least Another Brick in the Wall did. So, but when I discovered this album, I had long since been listening to Rush and Yes and Genesis for a while, and this was one of the first progressive albums prior to the turn of the century that I started listening to, and I liked it a lot. So then I got into a few years later, in the mid part of the century, like 2005 or 2006, I started taking out a lot of CDs and stuff that I'd bought but never listened to, because there was never any opportunity at home to listen to them, and the only time I would listen to stuff was in the car, and I went through a book listening to phase as well. So I started listening to Animals, and then I really liked that a lot. It became my favorite Pink Floyd album, and then now, since I started the show, more and more Floyd has come up, and I just think that they're to me, they're one of the forefront runners for the newer progressive movement that I've been listening to a lot more. Yes, Rush, Genesis, Jethro Tull, I'd already been listening to them, but these guys are the front guys for the newer group of stuff that I've been listening to, even though I've been listening to them for a while. And they've grown in esteem for me in the last year quite a bit with Adam Hart, Mother, and now I've been listening to Wish You Were Here, which I was surprised I knew every track on there, never having listened to the whole album before, because there's so much played on the radio, or so much played in different venues from that album. So I was surprised that I knew everything. Usually there's 2 or 3 tracks you might know and a bunch that you don't know, but I knew them all. So it's an album and a group that has grown on me quite a bit. They've influenced me to go and check out other progressive rock bands like Camel and Nectar and Eloy, and I'm sure there's some others that I'm not thinking of, Atomic Rooster and all that. So now I'm like expanding out in all directions, and I think Pink Floyd is a main factor in that reasoning. So Roger Waters, I don't know about his solo stuff. People like to crap on him a bit. I'm not sure that that's deserving. The guy was the main guy for all of these albums. Pretty hard to crap on a guy who's done all that. David Gilmour, I like his guitar style very much. I used to think he was the main vocalist for Pink Floyd, and I'm now beginning to think that it was Roger Waters. So I could be wrong on either. I'm still just discovering all this stuff. And I didn't know that Rick Wright even sang, but he does on one of the songs that I have on one of the albums that I have. So so I began to listen to them and expand them out, and I've got a live album by them now that I've been listening to a lot. It's on my playlist. I actually have 3 Pink Floyd albums on my playlist. That's about as thick as it gets for any group. One time I had 3 Rush on there, and another time I had, maybe it was Jethro Tull, I think I had 3 on, but generally speaking, most groups get about an album and they're lucky to get on there. They've got 3 on there now, so great band, great history, very influential in my desire to do this show. Pink Floyd was one of the bands that give me that desire to do that. And so I felt that they needed to be talked about. And the band members, it would be great if Roger Waters would rejoin them and they would do the kind of like one more quintessential album, even though Wright is gone. That would be great, but I don't see that going to happen. So the stuff they have is good enough. Like, you think about this album coming out in the early 70s, and it was already their 8th studio album. Wow, so there's still a lot more for me to listen to from them. So anyways, I've enjoyed doing this episode quite a bit, and I hope that you enjoy it as much as I did doing it. So please like, subscribe, give me comments, answer any questions that you may have, or correct me if I'm wrong on stuff. I'm okay with it all. That's how we learn, right? Filter out the misinformation, as they say. So you have yourself a great evening. Goodbye.